Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back once again to another edition of the movie Battleground. Today, we are joined here in a celebration of Pixar. On the heels of their recent release, Lightyear, which is currently in theaters now, we are going to be asking some big Pixar fans some big Pixar questions. Obviously, as you guys know, this is an exhibition match. This is just for fun. There's no intense wins. There's no huge losses. It's just going to be three guys who are fans of the studio having a debate about some of the best things from Pixar. So I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to go ahead and introduce our opponents. Entering first, he has a competitive record of no wins, one loss. However, he does have a second match coming up very, very soon in the tournament. He is Brian Nussbaum. Brian, welcome back to the Battleground, sir. How are you doing today?
It's very good. I love Pixar. Glad to do this, and yep, depending on how it goes, may the best person win.
All right. Thank you, sir. I'll go ahead and sit you in the back as we bring in your opponent, entering with a competitive record of one win, two defeats. He is Jonathan Peck. Sir, I ask you the same question. How are you feeling today?
Doing good. And also, before you say anything else, I brought my little friend with me on my right shoulder. His name is Remy. I think you heard of him. He has a little bit of a restaurant down in France, so I think he's a well regarded. And I had him with me to be my moral support. So basically, gonna have some fun along with it, and he's gonna be observed. And I got a lot of notes still on with that. So, for me, I love Pixar, and I love their animation films, almost all their films. And basically, I'm very excited when you first post me about we're going to do a Pixar fight. It's like, I'm signing on. I don't care what the questions are. I'm just going to have more time with it because I love their company so much.
All right. Thank you, sir. The rat can stay. You don't have nearly enough hair for him to try and maneuver and control with you, so I'm not worried about that one bit. So I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back and introduce our third opponent, coming in fresh off of a debut victory. He is 1-0. He is Alejandro Hernandez. Alejandro, welcome back, sir. How are you feeling headed into this match?
What's going on, Aaron? I'm pretty pumped coming off my win last week. I'm ready to get rolling. I did way less prep for this one than I did for the last one. But if my last match taught me anything, it's not necessarily about the points you bring up, but how well you articulate them and how you present them in your argument. So in that respect, I got to just push myself to talk good.
Yeah, talking good helps, and you want to know what else talking good helps in? Animated films, because that's all they got is talk. It's
Correct, and I
animators to make
love
the
me a
rest look good.
cartoon. I love me some family films, some animated films. It's legitimate cinema, and I don't know why people hate on them so much. I love The Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's my favorite Disney movie. Wreck-It Ralph is one of the best movies I've ever seen, period. So I'm ready to tear it down, man.
Neither of those are Pixar films, but they are very good. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in Jonathan and Brian, and we'll go ahead and get into this. This game, it's the same Battleground that you guys know. The way that the main rounds are going to work is each competitor is going to get 1 minute to open. They will get 2 minutes to expand. There will be a 5-minute open discussion period, and then they will each get 1 minute to close. That's going to go for questions 1 and 3. Question number 2 is going to be a speed round. I'll explain those rules once we get there. Behind the scenes, I have two judges, Zachary and Chris Diaz. They will come on screen and make the deliberations based off who they think won. If they happen to disagree, because unfortunately we weren't able to get a full judging panel just based on the record date and time, whoever the two players they pick, I will then decide between those two players who gets the point, with the third person unfortunately being eliminated from that round. But with that said, are you guys ready to go?
Let's do this.
Pick it up.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to go ahead and give a big shout out first off. Unfortunately, he could not be here with me, but I want to shout out Jacob Barber for collaborating with me on this match, as he contributed some questions as well. We threw some ideas back and forth as to what we could do. But this first question is one that I can completely credit to him. It was his idea and kind of formulating the wording of it, and I think it is a great idea. Because with Lightyear coming out, for those of you who may not have seen it, you don't quite know, Lightyear is a film in which it is the origin story of the character as seen in Toy Story. The way that the filmmakers have described it is, this is Andy's Star Wars. This is the movie that got Andy excited, that made him want Buzz Lightyear as a toy that you see in the Toy Story movies. And that's kind of the approach they took with it. And as we know, there's a bunch of toys in the world. We've also seen a little bit in Toy Story 2, characters of like Woody and Jesse and kind of their background and where they came from. So the question that we have on hand here is, what other toy from Toy Story should get their toy's origin story made into a movie? Now, there was no restrictions on this. They could pick any character from any of the 4 films to basically create an origin story around. Now, I did not necessitate that they had to pitch a story. However, if they do like one they would like to bring up, they can. That is on them. But judges, keep in mind that this was not required from them. They are just more so trying to sell why the toy should get its origin story. If a pitch happens to be a part of it, that's just bonus points. But with that said, behind the scenes, we deliberated on who would go first on which question. As always, it is based off of kind of record. So the way that it settled out, Alejandro, you will be going first on this question, followed by Brian and then Jonathan. All right. So Alejandro, I will go ahead and disappear, and you can begin speaking when you are ready. You have 1 minute.
The most interesting origin story I can think of for one of the characters in Toy Story would probably have to be the most out of place character, which is Ham, the piggy bank. I don't know how that dude got turned into a toy. Like, piggy banks were from like the mid 15th century, about 600 years ago, created as like legitimate housing for coins in the home. So that transference from household appliance to toy, that I think would be an incredibly interesting story. He also went through a couple of character changes. I think in the later films, they made him as like a rubber or plastic, but in the first film, he's definitely porcelain or ceramic. Like he's got that sheen to him, and then you can argue that it's the time, it's the bad animation, whatever. But I think him as a super cool character, John Ratzenberger, of course, playing him, is always a good time. So why wouldn't you give that dude a movie? He's been doing Pixar films, I don't know, 175 years or something like that. And that's why I went ultimately with the piggy bank. I think Ham is a super cool character.
And time. And that is a correct fact. Somehow, after being on Cheers for 11 years, John Ratzenberger found a gig that would pay him for longer, which is impressive in and of itself. Brian, we move over to you, sir. You are up next, and so you have 1 minute on the clock.
When it comes to the Toy Story characters, for me, I went with Woody. We found on Toy Story 2 that he was part of the TV show Woody Roundup, and might as well see what happens after the series. Like it'll be like a Western-esque film, a couple years after the after the show got canceled, like in the veins of a Galaxy Quest / Three Amigos-esque film, and I'll explain more later on.
Okay. All right. Is that time?
Yes, it is.
All right. Let me bounce the timer ahead. New timer. Oh, I fucking nailed that one. All right, Jonathan, you have 1 minute on the clock, sir. Time starts when you begin speaking. If you are talking, you are muted. There you go.
Sorry, my bad. Let me start over.
You're good. I just can't see your mouth the way that this is set up, so.
Oh, okay. All right. Just run it. Okay. When this question brought this up, I always feel there were a lot of choices you can choose from, and many characters that if I was hired by Pixar, which character I would use to make a movie about them. I'm gonna actually pick a character. The difference between both my components' characters is a little bit more of a background character and a little bit more side character. The only thing you mentioned this character once in Toy Story 1, and recently appeared like Toy Story 4 in it. And if you want to count specials, they have one Halloween special featuring him in it. The character I have chosen name is Combat Carl. Now, for those of you who don't know who Combat Carl is, here's my quick depiction of him. He is sort of like a G.I. Joe type action figure, which is loosely based on not only G.I. Joe, but the soldiers they fought during the war, specifically the Vietnam War. So my movie pitch is basically set like an animated war film during the Vietnam War, and he'll be the lead of them. And I will split more details when I get to the main. So that will be my choice.
All right. So we got Ham versus Woody versus Combat Carl. Only one of them has war experience, but that doesn't mean the other two can't win the battle. Alejandro, you have 2 minutes on the clock, sir, for Ham when you begin speaking.
I already said that Ham is an out of place character because I don't know how you would transfer. Like Andy has an insane imagination. We've already seen it multiple times with him doing the bridge sequence from the third movie, from the robbery in the second movie, and how he incorporates Ham pretty well into it. But you can understand how a stuffed cowboy is a toy. You can understand a space action figure being a toy, a Slinky Dog, a plastic T-Rex. How does a kid who has all of this stuff in a 2-story house end up playing with a piggy bank? I'm really confused about that. It raises a lot of questions, a lot of interesting questions, I think, about how he got into the world. He obviously has tenure, like John was saying. He's not a prominent role, but he is still a side character. Like he hangs out with Potato Heads and Rex all the time, only because he doesn't have anything to do. Like he's not incredibly mobile, not super athletic. He's not highly intelligent. But all the toys accept and love him as a friend. I think that'd be super cool to go into, especially since Andy, I would assume Andy has an allowance. So how much does Ham actually hold? Where did they get him from? Is he actually porcelain or plastic? We'll never know because this movie's not getting made. But if it were, I would have these questions. Ham, and I'll go back into John Ratzenberger for just a second. That dude is insanely talented, not only as an actor but also as a comedian. I feel like you could get a lot of laughs out of him if you give him a feature length. I mean, for a family film, 90-minute movie. But after getting back into the fold with Toy Story 2, I think Ham has more to offer than what we're seeing of him. I think all of the characters in the Toy Story verse have their own interesting backstory. What with going into Toy Story 3, transferring from one kid to the other, that could be an alley to explore. And for that, I'll cede my time. That 1 second.
All right, we're going to move back over to Brian. You have 2 minutes on the clock when ready.
Okay. I agree with Jonathan on how Color Carl film would look good, but to see Pixar tackle westerns, which you don't really get westerns that much, but animated, and the premise for my film would be years after Off the Air, a little girl voiced by Julia Butters asks a middle-aged Woody, voiced by Timothy Oliphant, to help save the town of Little Rock from Weather Bart's cousin, which would be great to see. And my villain would be voiced by Dan DeVito, and I would love to see how he'll adapt after all the years off the air, and seeing him like age up, and that would be like a great type of film to see for Woody's own story, which and also see how he became Andy's favorite toy, how Andy wants to get Woody after all these years. So yep, that I can see my time right there.
Okay. All right, so we'll get there. Jonathan, when the clock rolls over to 0, you can go ahead and take your 2 minutes.
So, sorry, I'll just wait till time gets.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, what I'm proposing for my Pixar film will be, and first off, we already got an animated Western, and it's called Rango. It's very good. And secondly, we never have, in old years, not just Pixar, but any animation in general, like an animated war film. Like, we see a lot of war films, all of it, but we never saw it in animated form, basically. So, what my movie picture is going to do is take place in 1968. Carl is basically one to join the Vietnam War because his father served in World War II during the time, and basically he wants to basically join in the war and serve his country along with it. And basically, what I propose my film will be is basically beginning during boot camp when he not only kind of performs badly, but also very persistent along with it. That's one of great character growth comes in during the few months he's at boot camp. He's friends with sort of his army mates. Basically, one of his friends basically try to help him out right here, try to help each other out, win up each other along with it. After months of training is over, once they graduate from the academy and training, they sent to the jungles of the Vietnam. Months have passed, basically, with about a year. He's sort of narrating in his journal along with it since him and his friend from boot camp basically got separated to go different Vietnam camps, and basically how it's a sort of his thoughts, like thoughts on the jungle, all that stuff, and sometimes the toll with it, but he kept a little optimistic feel along with it. So during one time, his friend's platoon basically got ambushed over the radio. He overhears it, so basically thought like, oh no, he wanted to get his friends dead. So basically, my film is basically sort of like a rescue mission along with it. Even had him to defy orders and basically trying to be more, try to noble what it's right. And by the way, my lead actor, if I were made this film by Combat Girl, will be Michael B. Jordan along with it, because I think you need that type of actor, not only that compassion, but basically great heart and all with it. I think him will be excellent in the role, even given the chance.
And time. All right, we're going to go ahead and get into the 5-minute open discussion between you gentlemen. As a reminder, all three of you have done this before, but remember, please be respectful of each other's time. Make your point, get in and get out, and allow everybody to speak. I don't like to intervene, but I will if I have to. With that said, the timer will begin. I always like to remind people, because, with 3 people, it's a little harder. Alejandro, you've done 4, so you know how clusterfuck it can get. So with that said, the timer will start when the first person speaks.
So, quick question on Brian's part, though.
Yes.
Like, you mentioned that it's not been sort of like an animated film on West. They have been some other animated Western films, like Bible Goes West, and I mentioned earlier with Rango. So, we already tackled that nature of wealth. So, doing like an animated West.
Not that much, two anime westerns. That's all.
But there's along with that. So, we already seen that before, though. That's the reason when my film comes in. Basically, we never got like an animated war film. We never even heard of it, and we never even seen. Like, I bet you two right now, name like an animated war film along with it, because you can't, because it's never been one around that time. That's the reason my pitch for Combat Carl has been not only do something first that we never done in Pixar or even animation in general, but sometimes you'll give a little bit support. Darker themes, like even the best Pixar films tackled some dark and thematic themes throughout with it. If you made a war film with Combat Carl, it will explore to many possibilities in great film, unlike with Brian has picked basically with Woody. And the same thing with Ham, though, because
John Ratzenberger doesn't. Well, I don't think John Ratzenberger come back to Pixar. Like, he hasn't done the Pixar movie like since Onward or Coco. I mean, the Toy Story 4 was probably his last film, so I don't think he'll come back for another Pixar film.
Dude's 1,000 years old, so I think we can cut a little slack.
He's not focus. Look what happened to Cars 2, made side character the main focus of the film. So I don't know how you'll focus on Ham as his own movie. He doesn't really do that much. Only do comic relief. That's all. So how we have his own movie?
He's like a ball of uncooked cookie dough. He's all potential. You can do whatever you want with him. Johnny Boy, I can tell you why there's not been an animated war film, bro. Like, that is.
He's the one seeing people die or something. They don't want to be all teared up after.
Yeah.
People die in westerns along with it, but they don't show it that much. So you can usually do like one death, but even then, it doesn't have to be. I'm not pitching like an R-rated animated film, anything. We never tackled that animation before that. And also go back to your point with Ham with Alejandro. Like, Ham is basically like any generic piggy bank. Like, exactly. What is your tone of the film you're trying to do? What is the tone
of the film? Like, is a adventure?
He's easily the oldest member of the crew, so yeah, it'd probably be like a.
Is he? They always say who the oldest one.
From the 16th or from the 15th century. That's what I'm saying. Like, piggy banks are older than Slinky Dogs, are older than voice box pull string cowboys. There's a lot we can explore with the history of toys and how Ham became a toy or be recognized as a toy, I suppose. But we've already done Woody's backstory anyway, as far as Woody's
backstory, like saying what happens after the show got canceled. They don't really say what happened. So why don't you tackle the aftermath of the cancellation of Woody's Roundup?
We
So
already
the
did.
castle, yeah, exactly. And even go to the space age period, cause of what happened though. We already know what's going to happen. And then also your show Woody's Roundup basically is puppets, basically. It doesn't have like real actors in there. So I don't understand what your vibe in the movie is going to be. At least with my film, it's based
type
on,
film.
at least with my film, though, at least it brings brings a realness to it. Like I mentioned, Comic Car is basically G.I. Joe, and also which is based on some real life soldiers. So my film is sort of like a real life possibility. Along with it, name a character named Carl, and basically along with it,
Carl
help his
Fredrickson.
friend.
But the argument isn't
No,
what
not Carl
film
Fredrickson.
would make, what would be the best type of film. It's what character. And Combat Carl is way
Carl's
less of a character
we
than
don't really see
Ham.
him that much. So although how he'll be his own movies, like he was very in Toy Story 4, like he was a side character in Toy Story Terror.
Also, weren't there like 4 of them?
Yeah, there was.
There was a little bit more two figures right here in Toy Story further, but we're getting a little bit off topic. Listen, I kind of agree with Brian's point on Ham though. Like, what Ham is going to do? Like, are you pitching like a real pig, basically, or just like a plastic where's it from? Like, it doesn't sound like his pig. And you. Oh,
sorry,
go ahead.
It's more of a it's like a New Girl in Town kind of story. He's trying to find his place among the toys because he's not a toy. That's my understanding.
If you're not a toy, then what?
Then how is he here? Why is he there? How come all the toys act like he's a toy? Those are the questions I want answered.
It's kind of like a fundamental question, but that doesn't mean I have to sort of use it as a movie, basically. And also another thing is, Ham is a funny character, and John Ratzenberger plays it well, but I don't want to finally hear
all the Pixar movies, the same voice, so
same voice,
So
and we never and not very good and more as a lead.
Not as much as he should get. I'll grant you, but I think John Ratzenberger's done enough. He's got tenure.
Time.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that is on me, but it is time. All right. We're going to go into the 1 minute closings. Alejandro, you are up first when you begin speaking.
There's a reason that a kid's film about war has not been done. We've already done Woody's backstory. Out of all of the characters, Ham is the most out of place, but it doesn't necessarily just have to be him. It also can be Mr. Potato Head and Rex, the guys he's used to hanging out with. Ham, I think, has a lot more to offer than just a couple of cheesy jokes or sarcasm to throw at the main characters, but that's because it's their story. Let's have him be the focus just one time. Maybe have him lose his coins or something. I don't know. Maybe battle the Tooth Fairy. Who knows? It's an animated film. You can get away with anything. Animated films are meant for escapism. They don't need to be real. They don't need to be violent with cowboys and war, just bang, bang, shoot, bullet, bullet, gun. Ham is a pacifist, and I think that makes for a much more interesting story. I think that once it gets rolling, we can get a little more, and you know what? He could probably even get his own universe with that concept. But that's going to be the end of my argument.
And time. All right, Brian, back over to you.
When it comes to Woody, it would be great to see him after all these years, seeing his life, be a Manhattan movie, and with Ham, nothing much. A side character not really won't be a good focus for a film, and for Woody, it'd be great to see him focusing his life after the cancellation, see how his life after, even seeing the gang after the Round gang, how do they break up, and exactly that. So I can see my time.
Okay. All right, and then Jonathan, when you are ready, you can go ahead and give your final minute.
My closing will point out is this. Basically, I mentioned earlier with Woody's Roundup, we all know what got canceled. It's not even a real life one, and it's just like Yankee Doodle puppet. So basically, don't like the point of it right here if we already know that already. Same thing with Ham though, because I still have no idea what kind of vibe of the film is going to be. Is like basically like a meta thing, is a prequel, or basically like if he was a real pig or something. Like it's a bit confusing, even though they were trying to try to move more scenario in the film though. And even you're trying to make it a little film though, I don't think it's a supporting character basically leading the film. We kind of seen that with Mater. I don't think we're going to do that with Hando. With my pitch for Combat Carl, it's basically starting a little bit, I guess, fresh, but also do some great messages throughout the film. And that's what Pixar films does best. Basically, some important messages, very adult subjects along with it, but also teach the audiences all around though. It's not just like a kid's product, but it's what all people will strive for. And I think one of the reason my pitch for Comeback Pro should be important for everybody though. So that's the reason why I'm pitching it.
All right, and that is time. A solid first round, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and sit the three of you in the back while I bring in our two judges. Okay, yep. All right, so to just throw out some quick fact checks, when speaking of animated Western films and animated war films, I looked up animated Western movies, and the first 5 that showed up were all wide release films in the United States. Those include Rango, Disney's film Home on the Range, An American Tale, Five Will Goes West, and also Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, and its sequel, Spirit Untamed. Though not Western in terms of cowboys, those are technically animated Westerns. In terms of animated war films, I could not find an American animated war film. However, famously, Studio Ghibli does have 2 films related to war, Grave of the Fireflies and The Wind Rises. So while we've never seen Guns and Bullets war films, we have seen war films in animation before, just not from American studios. Famously, John Ratzenberger, as was listed, is a part of or has been a part of Pixar's legacy in the past. He had a role in Pixar's first 22 wide-released films, doing everything from playing major supporting roles like Ham and P.T. Flea in A Bug's Life, to having minor roles like a construction worker in Up, and one of the workers inside the brain in Inside Out. John Ratzenberger has not appeared in a Pixar film since Soul. There was an animated reference to the actor. However, his voice was not in it since the release of Luca in 2021. He has not been referenced in either of the past 2 films. It's currently unknown as to why he is no longer working with Pixar. It's clearly not a soured relationship between the 2 studios or Disney, as he did reprise his role as the Abominable Yeti in Monsters at Work, the Disney Plus spin-off series to Monsters, Inc. However, he also is co-starring or starring as a part of the ensemble in the upcoming animated film Luck, which is the first film from producer John Lasseter, who obviously, for reasons, was fired from Pixar a couple of years ago. So who knows what the reason is, but it's clearly not a full souring of the relationship, as he has still worked with them. With that said, though, is based on what was said in the round, not the fun facts I find. So, Zach, I go to you in as concise a way as you can get it for me. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
For me, I feel like Alejandro probably had the best round of the 3, more because he brought up the John Ratzenberger thing. Like, he's never really had a lead role in an animated movie, but also the biggest thing he brought up was that there's so many questions and so many ways that a Ham movie could go that it's like it made it more interesting of wanting to see that movie. And then he also brought up that why we haven't seen an animated war movie is because it's too dark. And for all those reasons, that's why Alejandro gets my vote.
Okay, so we have the first vote to Alejandro. Chris, over to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the selling point?
So, in March, I'm agreeing with that. I went the opposite way. I thought Jonathan wanted me for me. He painted a more plot picture for me, and he managed to combat the other 2. So, have it work, because what would you do? And what he actually been told before. Jonathan just painted a picture for me. A fine movie for cancer. And we have really painted a lot of Twister movie.
All right, so that means it is going to go to me for the tiebreaker vote. Unfortunately, Brian is out of this, so it is between Alejandro and Jonathan. Honestly, these 2 were neck and neck for me in terms of points made, so it is going to be a situation where it'll be the slightest of things breaks the tie. but I am going to give it to Alejandro. Now, while it was specifically Jonathan did point out that his plot wasn't as thorough as what either Brian or Jonathan gave, again, the plot was more of a bonus. He gave a very particular and unique reason as to why the film could be made, and I think his biggest hit against Jonathan was what Chris said. Despite the fact that Jonathan said that his movie could potentially be done in a kid-friendly way, nothing about the plot seems friendly to kids. Or that was what Zach said. I apologize. Nothing about the plot seems friendly to kids, and Alejandro pointed that out perfectly, I think, and the fact that there's a reason you don't see war movies like that get made for that type of audience. So again, very close margins. I think both did a good job, but it is going to go to Alejandro. So guys, thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back and bring back in the competitors as we will go ahead and move on to question number 2. And question number 2 is going to be the speed round. Now, the way that this is going to work is there is no open discussion. These guys are going to get quick blips to get their points out before we go to the judges. It's going to be a 60-second opening, followed by a 90-second chance to expand, then followed by a 45-second closing argument. But the question here is, Pixar, especially over the course of the 2010s, has developed a number of franchises. Now, while most of these only have 2 films, the fact of the matter is they went back and took a lot of their older properties and created newer sequels to them, some of which worked really well, some of which you argue may not. We're going to focus on the positive, and the question is, what is the best franchise/series of films created by Pixar? So each of these guys have a candidate of films with sequels from Pixar. They're going to try and argue why theirs is the best. All right, so as we go ahead and bring in the timer for this round, Brian, you are up first.
Yep.
For the speed round this time. So I'll go ahead and disappear, and you will get 1 minute to begin opening when you start speaking.
For me, I went for a franchise that I grew up with watching, and I went with the Toy Story franchise. Because each film ups the ante one. You get the first one being the origins of Pixar. The second one being like a road trip comedy, flipping the switch between the Buzz story and the Woody story, flipping around. The third one you got nominated for like Best Picture. Everyone's saying the best one. And the fourth one, even though people are not a fan of it, it's still a great ending to the saga. And also it has one of the best story that you have created on TV series and some direct-to-video series based on one of the characters. So that's my pick. I'll talk more later.
All right. All right, Jonathan, you are up next, sir. Time starts when you begin speaking for 1 minute.
Okay. My franchise I chose from is the one I'm wearing in my shirt right now, which is The Incredibles, specifically 1 and 2. And The Incredibles, all written and directed by Brad Bird, and basically the first Incredibles film took place in the year 2004. This is same year Spider-Man 2 came out, a year before the X-Men films came out. This is sort of like an interesting period when this movie came out. And when it came out, and not only people think still is the best Fantastic Four film, but it brings like a great world of superheroes that all fell into the limelight. And this is sort of Pixar's first PG film, and basically brings like about marriage, how you keep alive, basically along with it. Even years later, when Incredibles 2 came out, it sort of entered basically a phase during the superhero movement around that time in 2018, along with it, and explored some possibilities and themes of it. So that's the reason I picked the best franchise is The Incredibles.
And time. All right, Alejandro, back over to you. 1 minute.
Monsters Incorporated has everything that I think a Pixar film needs, and that is marketability. Nobody wants to buy an action figure of Carl Fredricksen. Nobody wants to get a human character. You can get plushies of every kind of character from Monsters Incorporated. The Monsters movies, I think, are the most consistent of the franchises. With things like Toy Story and The Incredibles, you expect them to go in certain directions rather than just kind of do the same thing over again. But Monsters, they had a great idea with Monsters University. I think personally, like that's super interesting to me. And even Monsters at Work TV show is actually really, really good. If any of you get a chance to check it out, it's pretty funny. But you can always find something to love about these movies. The first movie was such a heartfelt, like love story between these two characters, but in actuality, it's like a horror movie. This little girl gets kidnapped by monsters. There's so much action. There's so much betrayal and story that you can tell. And for that reason, I went with the Monsters movies.
And time. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the 90-second expansion. Brian, you're up first.
Okay. For Toy Story, you get amazing characters. You get great music, great score. With Monsters Inc. Even though it's a great series, people don't really not really a fan of the second one. They mostly connect with the first one. And for The Incredibles, yes, it's great, but the time difference though, like it had to wait 18 years. But with Toy Story, you don't have to really wait that long. Only wait you have to wait for the third one, which is like 10 years later. And you get the amazing score by Ryan Newman, great scenes, Buzz Skywalker, for example. You even get all the great quotes and even the innuendos they add in it, and it's one of the first films that really get you teared up, especially with the sequence of Buzz finding out he can't fly. And all the amazing songs like "You Got Fed Me," "I Will Go Fly No More," "We Belong Together," and that I can see my time there.
Okay. All right, jump that forward. Jonathan, you got 90 seconds on the clock, sir, when you're ready.
So for me, The Incredibles is not only predates the superhero genre we know of today, it predates basically what animation is. This is the major difference between Brian's and Alejandro is by one guy and one vision of a filmmaker, not group of Pixar filmmakers collaborating the story. This is a remembered story through and through, a consistency of story and tone throughout the two films. It brings like basically like some real life issues with parental issues or when they do work. It was bringing in sort of like how you do well or powers, basically a lot of comic book influences, like the Keenack is sort of loosely based on it from Watchmen, and brings in a great score by two films by Michael Giacchino, who launches music composer career after the first film. So basically it sort of launches basically not only superhero, one of great composers working right now, it launches basically the great villain along with it with Syndrome in the first movie, even with the underrated part with the screensaver in the second one, and brings like great action to it throughout the both films. You don't feel stilted or bored when watching these films though, and didn't even feel a little played out at that point. Well, Monsters prequel is a bit debatable, which is okay at best, and even Toy Story is a bit more subjective. It depends how you view it. But with The Incredibles, it's no subjection. It's basically a consistent film right through and through for The Incredibles.
Okay. Alejandro, back over to you for 90 seconds.
Of course, it takes a long time for Pixar to make sequels. The animation takes forever. Each of these franchises have a good like 7 years between films. That said, I think Toy Story and The Incredibles both had a template that they could work off of. Because yes, The Incredibles does predate superhero movies as we know today, but 5 Superman movies and 4 Batman movies had already come out. We're already pretty used to it at that point. Toy Story is about toys. Like, how much more creative can you get with that? With Monsters, they had to build the world from the ground up using Scream for energy and the threat of running out of it, bringing that realism to the story, I think is actually very beneficial to children. I think it teaches a great lesson about conservation and about being true to yourself. As for Monsters University, anybody who's been to college has had that moment of, is this really what I want to do? Am I sure? Man, I really want to do that, but I don't know if I can. Like, you have those moments that resonate with you as an audience member for Monsters University. And again, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but Monsters at Work is a pretty good show. They go into that a lot more too. But Monsters, I think, could be probably the best of the Pixar series, only because they keep having to create different ideas. They're forced to be creative because we don't know how monsters are supposed to act in the real world. We have to give them their own personalities and their own troubles and their own journeys to go through. And so with that, I'll end it.
And time. All right, we have 1 minute left on the round, guys. For each of you, Brian, you are up first.
Yep. Well, you say it's about toys, but for me, did you get more emotional stuff. You get the big in this incinerator sequence, like all the tension rush up to the big climax, and even the ending of Toy Story 3. You feel like you tear up, saying, "What do you say? So long, partner." With Monsters University, even though it's about college, you don't really need that origin story of how they became friends and how they went to college. They even mentioned the first film, how they would be in college. So I'll really guess. So yeah, I'm just go end it right there. 5 seconds spare.
All right, Jonathan, over to you, sir. 1 minute.
When people think about Pixar, the first thing they brought up is The Incredibles, and some of their artists, their best Pixar film is The Incredibles. They know the characters right here. They know Bob Parr, they know Ellen Parr, they know Dash and Violet, they know Frozo and Jack Jack. Basically, people love about this franchise right here from Incredibles 1 and 2. The hype around Incredibles 2, though, basically has been a long time of doing it. Even people dressed up as Frozen and The Incredibles themselves basically went long of a wait. And as yeah, animation took a long time to do it along with it, but I felt like it's more impact and more relevancy, and people will talk about. I think The Incredibles. I think that had the best film series on it, not a TV show or loosely comics along with it, basically. So the best one films along with. So I put The Incredibles.
And time. All right, and over to Alejandro for 1 minute left.
Having an emotional story is something that Pixar does really, really well, regardless of who's telling the story or who we're following. That's what makes all the Pixar movies work, is that you can feel for them. Monsters, you have to feel for a monster. That's got to be an incredibly difficult task for a writer or a director or even an actor to put across. Like, how are you supposed to make them likable when monsters are a bad thing? Like, everybody knows superheroes are a good thing. Everybody knows toys are a good thing. Monsters has to fight an uphill battle to make you like these characters and build this world and tell this story about getting everything the way it needs to be and breaking up the status quo. I think that's an incredibly intelligent film for the time, and especially for a kid's film.
And time. All right, guys, another solid round there. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back as I bring the judges back in. The only major fact check that I have for the round is there was question brought up as to the release dates for sequels for Pixar films, and it is just basically a general rule of thumb that all sequels for Pixar take a long time to come out. If we're talking about the Toy Story franchise, there was 4 years between Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2, but Pixar has publicly said that only happened because Toy Story 2 was supposed to be a direct-to-DVD film. It wasn't even really supposed to be a main focus project, but they were proud of what they were working on, and so thus it became a theatrical film. But in terms of the follow-ups, if you want to go from Toy Story 2 to Toy Story 3, that took 11 years, and then Toy Story 3 to Toy Story 4 took 9 years. As Jonathan said, it was 8 or 14 years from Incredibles 1 to Incredibles 2. And then if you want to talk about monsters, it was 12 years between 2001 and 2013. And if you want to count the show, as Alejandro referenced, that would be another 7-year wait, as the show aired its first season last year in 2021 after Monsters University came out in 2013. Aside from that, though, it is about what was said in the argument. Chris, I go to you first, sir. Who gets your vote, and what was the main point?
So it's very good arguments. All three great choices. I kind of really went with Alejandro at the end, because I felt like he just managed to pull back at the other two, and I just felt like he made an interesting argument about the message of Monster Inc. and I didn't get any rebuttal from the other two again. Monster Inc. and Monster where I wanted to. And same by Monster Anniversary. He made a good point. So if you want any information.
All right. So, Zach, over to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Actually, I'm going to agree with Alejandro. Brian had me for a while, and then Alejandro basically came in with the other two kind of had a template, and this you had to build from the ground up. And also the point of that the other two are supposed to be good things that you like, and they were able to make monsters, which are normally a bad thing, into things that people gravitated towards. So for that, I'm going to also go with Alejandro.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you both in the back as I bring back the competitors. Alejandro, you have won the match officially, but since it's an exhibition, these guys prep these questions for fun. We're going to go ahead and play the third one anyways. Jonathan, Brian, you're playing for second place. Alejandro, I guess you're playing for total dominance. But we'll go ahead and go into the third question. All right, so we'll go ahead and get into question number 3. And as was discussed, Pixar obviously has a lot of impressive in-house talent, but that doesn't mean they haven't worked with talent from outside of the studio. As was said earlier, Brad Bird originally worked outside of Pixar. He was brought in after the success of The Iron Giant. They also brought in Brenda Chapman, who was most famous for directing The Prince of Egypt, to kind of help play Savior on Brave when that movie had some production issues. So they're not against working with people outside the studio. And so I thought it'd be an interesting question to pose. Which director of either live action or animated film past would make a great Pixar film? Now, that animated part doesn't really matter because these guys picked basically mostly live action directors. But it's still an interesting point of thought, and I'm curious to see what they have to say. Jonathan, you are up first on this one, so I'll give you your timer. I'll disappear to the back, and you got 1 minute to start when you're ready.
So when I'm pitching a filmmaker, if they want to make an animated film, if they want to work with Pixar, it also blends of sort of a 50-50 range. Not only you make a Pixar film, but also you'll make your own film and your own stamp with it, kind of like what Brad Bird did and many other filmmakers who decided to work with Pixar. So the filmmaker I have chosen to make an animated film, who hasn't done an animated film, but almost did at one point of his career, Edgar Wright. And the reason I pick Edgar Wright to make a sort of a Pixar flick because he has the filmmaker capabilities of not only based on storytelling, but also like camera moves and dynamics when he all his films, like the Cornell trilogy to Baby Driver to Last Night in Soho. So it brings like not only more of a filmmaker vibe to not only sharp wit but humor, all this stuff sometimes with Pixar, but also brings like great cleverness along with it. Like he almost made an animated film with Shadows back in DreamWorks when they try and get that project off the ground, but they never did. So what would be a best idea of not only come back that project to Pixar, but or even a brand new animated film to come within Pixar? I'll explain more details when we get to the argument.
All right. We're going to go over to Alejandro, sir, when you begin speaking.
The best animated films are the ones that are stylized. And for that reason, I went with Gore Verbinski. That dude has such an eye for detail and as one of my favorite all-time horror directors with The Ring. That movie is special to me for a couple of reasons. The main reason being it's so bright. It's not your typical horror movie that just plays with shadows and jump scares you. You can see everything that's going on. And I think that's an incredible talent to have. If you can see everything that's going on in a horror movie and still get scared, that's good direction right there. So Gore Verbinski, I think, would make a a fantastic animated film. Camera tricks aside, because you can't really use any of that stuff as far as an animated film, but the dude has vision. The guy can paint a picture with the story that he's trying to tell. That, and he's also had his fair share of kids' films, what with directing some of the Pirates movies. I think he did the first 3. Please feel free to correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I'm very certain that I am. And even that movie has a lot of good cinematography. The shot that I always think of is the walking underwater thing underneath the boat. It's so clear.
And time. And yes, you are factually correct on that. He did the first 3 of that series. All right, Brian, over to you, sir. 1 minute on the clock.
For me, I went with a director that could bring his own style and his own humor to it. And I'm going with Taika Waititi as my pick. He is one of those directors that could do like no wrong. He could do like a superhero type film like he did with Ragnarok, or he can do like a horror comedy similar to From the Shadows. And the type of film I'm doing with him is like a villain-esque story type movie with him. And I'm going to explain more of it in the next round.
All right. So we have Edgar, we have Gore, and we have Taika. 3 very different directors. Jonathan, you are back up on deck, sir. When you begin speaking, you have 2 minutes.
All of our filmmakers are great stylists. There's nothing I will deny about that. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Don't want to kind of recur an argument. So basically, the reason why I pick Edgar is that he has basically have a great storytelling, is a great eye for detail, great detail with action, and it was great characters along with it. Great characters with Shaun and Shaun the Dead, integration with the 2 lead characters for Hot Fuzz, The World's End, even with Scott Pilgrim basically throughout the movie, and even Baby Driver, even his latest film with Last Night in Soho. So basically, he could do like different vibes of types of films that you wanted to do. What if we had the full ring, but with animation along with it? They could like imagine like the Cars opening scene in Baby Driver that's a kinetic through all the way through, but with animation, the type of style along with it, and basically let unleash along with it. That's the reason if you get to like want to make an animated film, basically a Pixar film, he had an opportunity to do that. He had an opportunity to basically let's show 3 of his creativity as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, and that is why Edgar is such a prominent figure right here if he decided to go animated film, and even something he always wanted to do basically throughout his career. Like I said, he always made that animated film in Shadows back in DreamWorks along with it. So he was always wanted to do it along with it. So basically, not only collaborate with if he's writing the script or if he's co-writing the script, it brings like an authenticity. Like, yeah, that's an Edgar Wright writing dialogue, and also works in both ways. Like, you can work both as an Edgar film and also a Pixar film along with it, and brings a shine through along with it. So the difference, maybe want to see with Gore Verbinski though. Like, Gore's a talented director, I will agree, but the only issue with that, it doesn't get a little too overbloated. Even some of the style, like even as those talented Pirates of the Art, they sometimes come out as a bit overblown. Even his worst film, even with The Mexican and The Lone Ranger, that's not sort of enough his finest hour along with it. That was a little overbloated with style. It just no one kind of cared on it. So animation is a little bit tricky. Taika's a talented director, but I think it's more overboard style, kind of work with somewhere else, not mainly the Pixar.
Time. All right, Alejandro, over to you, sir.
I don't think Gore Verbinski's overblown at all. I think that dude's worth all the credit in the world for what he's done. Edgar Wright, on the other hand, a little bit overblown in my opinion. First of all, there's no such thing as a horror comedy. Shaun of the Dead is a comedy with horror elements. That is, like, horror comedy just has the same ring to me as minty sour. It doesn't make any sense. As far as Gore being overblown, I think his style speaks for itself. He goes from The Ring, which is kind of it's almost a character piece about Rachel and how going through this whole thing changes her as a character. And then you have Pirates of the Caribbean, which is just a swashbuckling adventure. Plenty of action, plenty of comedy, plenty of wide-angle shots that are so beautiful. And, of course, when you get into the second and third Pirates movies, of course, the budget goes up. You get to do a lot more. You get to play with CGI. You get to make Bill Nighy this horrifying creature, and get the Flying Dutchman in there with all kinds of different monsterish characters, I guess would be the term for it. And that's something that I think Gore Verbinski could bring to the table. Like, that dude can match wits with, I think, Guillermo del Toro as far as creature design. Like, I think he's that good. And for an animated film, I think you have to have so much creativity to tell this story. Not only to tell the story, but also to build these characters in this world that you're trying to get across to the audience. Gore Verbinski, I think, has probably the best ability at doing that out of anybody. And with that, I will actually see my time.
All right, so go ahead and jump the timer forward. All right, Brian, you have 2 minutes on the clock.
For when you say overblown, I wouldn't say he's overblown, Taika. He could do anything perfect. He could do a horror that turned like mockumentary to a superhero to a war comedy, and while to transform that to animations. Like, he had never done an animated film before. He could do like the villain-ass film talk. My pitch is like two villains voiced by Jim Carrey and Christian Bale tried to compete to be over the top to against a superhero voiced by Chris Tucker, and I think he could do it perfectly. He's one of those great directors. With Gore, he's good, but he didn't do that many films like people talk about that much, except for Pirates. For Edgar, he's okay. He did some animation film before, so why don't you have like a director who had never done animated film before, Taika, to talk about? So yep, I'll go see right there.
All right. Bounce to the head. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into the open discussion segment once again. Guys, when you are ready, the timer will start when the first person speaks.
I totally forgot to mention why I thought Edgar Wright was overblown, and that's the whole Ant-Man situation. Like,
Yep.
Apparently the dude does not play well with others.
Exactly.
Well, here's the funny thing with that. That was early film in like MCU. That was before like filmmakers landed in some more style though. Even in hindsight, maybe they could have stayed on board. They could have been lenient. But even back then, right now, if they were developing right now though, they're basically more lenient to that. Here, what I mean by overblown with Gore Verbinski, I got 3 little words: the Lone Ranger. It got ballooned budget and it bombed hard critically, commercially,
as well.
and it cost a lot of money. Even his last movie, like A Kill for Wellness, beautifully shot. A little bit no substance and just kind of bored, just being out there along with that. If you mention when it goes,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, all right. What I mean to say is like if Gore does like anime film very well with Rango, but if you want to use that same sensibility for Pixar, I don't think Pixar will sort of allow him to sort of like do that direct approach when he have with Rango. If there are other studio, he will succeed in that. But in Pixar, I don't think he will sort of that similar idea even with Rango. Though even the last time Disney film he did cost the studio a lot of money along with it. So it's a little bit hard to like get fully on board with Gore as a filmmaker if you want to make an anime film for Pixar.
You can't attribute the Lone Ranger bombing to Gore Verbinski alone. Like, there's a lot of things that have to go wrong in order for a movie to bomb that hard. And I'm not going to argue that it didn't, because it absolutely did. But like you guys were saying, Rango exploded. Everybody loved that movie when they saw it. Or if they didn't, they went back and watched it, and then they loved it.
Here's the thing. It's still a good film, a great film, but it's not more like a Pixarian to do. It's not like a Pixar film along with it. Like, you can still have a style in there, but also got me more like Pixarian feel. That's the reason it works so perfect with Edgar Wright, because he will have that more of a creativity, a little bit better, the way he sort of camera moves. But with the animation, though, he had to be more very creativity, little keep eyes on cameras, character work along with it. Kind of like with Brad Bird right here, though, he moves the camera in more frenetic pace, but when I feel jump cutting, a little shaky camish. That's what Edgar's been doing with his live action films, not only with the Cornell trilogy, Baby Driver, even his last film, Last Night in Soho, and brings out a little more right here, bring that approach to that animation. Imagine like the mirror scene in Last Night in Soho, put in like an animation standpoint, the possibility of what he does with it very, very well. And the thing with Taika though, like Taika is a very particular filmmaker along with it. Like he always made like a stop motion film with like Michael Jackson's Chimp along with it. Didn't get off the ground for some obvious reasons along with that. But even if he pitched that film like a Pixar along with it, I don't think he will allow that like go into
We
like
haven't seen
development
Pixar done
phase.
stop motion, so why have him do a stop motion anyways?
But they're more of a computer animated film. Like if you picture like a different genre, like a Leica, it would make more sense. But Pixar, I don't think that fit that type of film very well, though. At least for my film, it fits like the way with Edgar Wright films it along with it. A little bit of camera movements, it based a little frenetic pacing, sound, even great soundtracks along with it. There's a bigger plus than more than Gore and even Taika does.
Well, if Edgar Wright did make an animated movie for Pixar, they would want him to play ball with them with the way they want to do the story, and
He
that
probably
dude
will
would
work
probably
well with
walk.
others. Like the whole aspect.
They let them. They let Brad Bird doing it along with it, though. They let Brad Bird and other filmmakers do it, though. That's the thing with Pixar. It's not just the think tank at Pixar. They let filmmakers do it right here. Give them more for that pace. Yeah, they will have callback, but it's not be overbearing. Basically, it's not gonna be overbearing with change this, change this, change this. Like it's not gonna be like that, though. It will basically like have the freedom to basically create leeway right here. And I think that maybe the difference for Edgar, for me, and the rest with George, with Gore and Taika. They will have a more leeway, but I don't think it will match well with the Pixar.
Well, Taika's
lean
already
over
into Disney
here.
Family. Like he's doing his Star Wars film and like MCU, he's right into Disney Family. Even with Gore, Gore's also in Disney Family. With Edgar, I don't know how well he'll work with others. Like it will be another controversy, like the whole MCU situation, or
And can the dude tell a family-friendly story? Like everything I've seen that dude do.
Well, he wrote The Adventures of Tintin. He didn't direct the film. He wrote The Adventures of Tintin. It's a family film along with stuff. So Edgar can do it. And even the slate of films, he's about to do like more like a family film along with it, very adjacently. So basically, he can do that. Basically, even basically, some of his influence were basically. Terry Gilliam basically he made like family flicks along with it, but it's a message. That's the reason why I think Edgar, if you want to do like an anime Pixar film, this might be sort of the best way to do it. It brings like those family mentalities, but his filmmaking, his writing, and his creative perspective on it. That's the reason why I have with it.
But the dude doesn't seem to be able to compromise. And
Exactly.
Pixar is very much
Pixar a family company.
Pixar is very much a team effort. It's a lot of people working on the movie to try to get it done properly. And Taika, I'll say I don't know if he could do it actually.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the closings. Jonathan, you are up for Edgar Wright when you begin speaking.
Edgar Wright has proven that even if he was not there, at least he could play well with others, even for a writing process. That's maybe when films work, though. Even with Pixar, it will lead you to it. Like kinetically, framing, filmmaking, basically with the camera movement. That actually works well in some of the best Pixar films when it moves the camera, some little real life approach. If Edgar would have an opportunity to do it, he'll show you it along with it. And that's the reason he was maybe a better option than Gore or even what Taika does in the film, though. They're both talented, granted, very visualist filmmakers, but I don't think they were not 100% there with there. They had, like I mentioned with Gore, the last Disney film he did cost the studio a lot of money and basically partially responsible with that balloon budget and kind of way too far with it. Taika's a very talented filmmaker, like I mentioned. His previous stop motion film did not got made for that reason. Basically, that erratic mindset. If they wanted to do more Pixar film, they would pitch it out immediately. So I don't feel like he will be sort of his best interest to do it. But Edgar has sort of the best interest with his filmmaking capability to mesh well with Pixar.
And time. All right, over to Alejandro when you begin speaking.
Again, you can't solely blame a director for why a movie bombed, and the only reason that Gore Verbinski was allowed to balloon the budget is because they trusted him to make the best movie. That's the thing that I think Edgar Wright or Taika Waititi wouldn't have from a studio like Pixar, where they're looking at your credentials, they're looking at how well you play with others and how well you can tell a story. Edgar Wright can tell a great story. Some of his jokes were kept in Ant-Man, so maybe the dude's just a good writer. I could say the same for Taika Waititi, but I'll just go back to Gore Verbinski's adaptation of The Ring, the Japanese film Ring, or Ringu, was a completely different movie. Like that movie has the shadows, has the darkness, has the jump scares. The Ring that Gore Verbinski did, none of that nonsense. He's trying to tell this story about a mother and her child and how she's going to save him. And you feel for them. You feel that desperation. And with things like Rango, you get that heartfelt moment that you would usually get in a Pixar film for things like that. So I think Gore Verbinski, hands down, best director for a Pixar animated movie.
And time. All right, and then Brian, over to you for the final minute of the game.
Taika could do no wrong. Perfect director for a type Pixar film. The reason his other film, a stop motion film, didn't get picked up was because of the whole controversy, because of the whole documentary. But with Taika, he's already in the family with other films he directed, part of the Disney family. And for Gore Verbinski, he could do. He's a good director, but I don't think he'll let him direct after the whole big bomb of the last Lone Ranger. And for Edgar Wright, it won't. I don't know how well he'll work with each other because of the whole MCU situation. So if he was directed, he might be a bit of controversy as well. So I'm going to stop right there. I did my closing argument.
All right. That is going to be the round, guys. Another solid one. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back and bring in the judges. So go ahead and mute that. All right. So in terms of any fact checks, the biggest that was kind of discussed throughout the round is the fact that all of these guys, while not being animation directors by trade, do have experience in animation. What is that experience? So we'll kind of get into it. So Edgar Wright has been involved in, technically speaking, 2 animated films. He did write the script for the Steven Spielberg directed film, The Adventures of Tintin, although it is worth noting that the film has 3 writers in Stephen Moffat, Joe Cornish, and Edgar Wright. None of them actually finished a whole final draft script, if that makes any sense. Moffat wrote the film first and did the rough draft of the script. However, the writer's strike hit when he was forced to stop. And then following the writer's strike, he was hired on as the executive producer of the reboot of Doctor Who, which Spielberg allowed him to exit the project to take that job. That is when Joe Wright and Joe Cornish were brought in, and they began writing a draft based on his draft. However, before the final draft could be complete, Edgar Wright exited the project to go make Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So the actual final draft of the script was finished by Joe Cornish with uncredited aid from Spielberg and Peter Jackson, who were the director and producer of the film, respectively. So it was no one person's vision. It was kind of a hodgepodge script of different ideas. As was said, Edgar Wright also did attempt to work with DreamWorks Animations. He was working with British comedian David Williams on a film based around the concept of shadows. Now, this was actually a pickup of a story that had been at DreamWorks. It originally was pitched to them in 2010 by Mark Dindal, who is most famous for directing The Emperor's New Groove. However, he exited the project in 2012, excuse me. Then a director named Alessandro Carloni, who worked on Kung Fu Panda 3, came on. He exited in 2015, which was when Wright was brought in to take over their idea and develop the film. It seems as though when DreamWorks was sold to Universal Pictures, the project kind of got lost in the shuffle. However, it has never actually been officially canceled. Gore Verbinski is the easiest to figure. He has actually won an Academy Award for directing an animated feature when he won Best Animated Feature for the 2011 film Rango, which was produced through Nickelodeon Studios and an independent animation company. Taika Waititi also does have experience working in animation, but not quite animation that you would expect. For starters, a lot of people may not know that he actually wrote the original draft of what would go on to become Moana. He was the person who originally wrote it and pitched it to Disney. However, he exited the project because around the time that he was writing it, he had his first child. So he left to focus on that, and then later would allow Disney to hire on Jared Bush and rewrite the script. He offered to go uncredited, but if you do check the credits of that movie, he's in the special thanks section for his contributions to the movie. He would also later, he's also currently working with Netflix on an animated miniseries based on the book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He is hired to produce 2 seasons of that, one based on the first book and one based on its sequel, although it's not known how far along in production that is. It's also worth noting that he is also in, as an actor, the thing that inspired this whole match, is he's actually one of the leading cast members in Lightyear, playing one of the astronauts aiding Buzz Lightyear. But with that said, we'll go to the judges. Zach, you're up first. Based on what was said, who gets your vote?
This was a hard match to judge, but I think it's a three-peat for me for Alejandro, partly because he does have experience with directing an animated feature, but also they both, Brian and Jonathan, brought up Lone Ranger multiple times, and I felt like he was able to perfectly counter them with why the budget ballooned, and he gave a great reasoning for that. And for those 2 reasons, that's why I go with Alejandro.
All right. Chris, I go down to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Yeah, Rick Johnson, I think he could paint a more fisherman director what he could do, and that won me over at the end.
Okay, so it is a 2-1 Alejandro versus Jonathan. Yeah, that the open discussion round I think was really good for all 3, because now it goes to me between those 2. The open discussion, the thing is, I think they all did a good job of kind of bringing up big points to hit back against each other, right? All of these directors have had projects that failed. Some of them specifically have had animated projects that never got off the ground for one reason or another. And so, but for me, in a very slight edge, I am actually going to give the point to Jonathan on this round, simply because it seems like the biggest hit back against Edgar Wright was his history of working with Marvel, which is obviously, it's well known that he was supposed to direct Ant-Man, and after working on it for a number of years, he dropped out of the project. But I think Jonathan's rebuttal of that, of saying Pixar has shown that their environment is very different from how Marvel runs things there. Everything is kind of under Kevin Feige, whereas Pixar allows a little more room for creative expression. Not all their writers are on every film, so to speak. I think that point rings true, and I think he did the best job between the two or a better job between the two of pitching the creative angle that he could bring to the film. But with that said, judges, thank you guys so much. I will sit you in the back because we are going to talk to our competitors, introducing first who is the winner of this match, Alejandro Hernandez, coming out as the winner of the Pixar match. You are still 1-0. That is your competitive record. But I have to ask you, how are you feeling after that?
2 in a row, man. I can't believe it. And officially, I'm 2-1, or I should say, not unofficially, I'm 2-1 for Battleground. So, man, I'm taking off, bro. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I thought you did a great job. You had some interesting angles on each of these questions. I thought you had very unique answers, comparatively speaking. What was kind of your mindset for when you picked those, just out of curiosity?
Oh, well, with Ham, he's just the most interesting and out-of-place character. For Gore Verbinski, man, that one was tough. I probably would have gone with Jonathan, too, only because I did -0 prep for this match. So I was just kind of pulling stuff off the top of my head and out of my, starfish. So I'm not sure how I came out with the win today, but man, it is fun.
Absolutely, man. Well, congratulations on getting the win. As we said to you previously in your last match, your next opponent is going to be Andy Sweet, who comes in off a win himself, 2-2 with a knockout. So even though your record's only 1-1 or 1-0, excuse me, now you've got some extra prep under your belt for that match to get a little more even with him. So I look forward to seeing you then, sir, and I wish you a good day. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
We'll drop you to the back and bring in Jonathan, who gave a very valiant effort, sir. A couple of those rounds, that first round and that third round especially, it was a deadlock thing, and obviously you did get that point and come out in second place. How are you feeling after this performance?
Yay, I got second place. Whoopee. Okay. All right. Now, congratulations, Alejandro. It was a fun match. It's a fun exhibition match. Which, I'll be more honest. I never thought he could pull off a movie pitch very well about Ham, so I was very surprised on it. So kudos to you. Even you said like you don't prep about that, so I get double more credit because me and my sister wrote a patch treatment about Colin Carl. So even though something like he didn't mention right here, that's more of a story pitch. But anyway, all right. And I have more fun right here, so at least I got a point out of it. So basically, I will have more of a second place. So it's very good second place. And at least I don't know if this one might help me with my doing it, or at least he whispered in my ear will help me out. I don't know. You could be the judge on that. So well, I have more fun in this match. So I have more fun. So I really hope this will help maybe for a bridge to help me get back in more debate and move back to Battleground, basically, if I have a chance to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we do have matches scheduled, of course. Your next opponent, so you're coming in, you're 1-2, you're off the back of a good win. Your next opponent is going to be Tyler Birch, who comes in at the same record as you, 1-2. Do you know Tyler? Have any thoughts on him? Or if not, then just it was good to have you, man.
I think I know Tyler about once. That's all probably I can say about that. So basically, I know he's a cool dude. So I will wish him good luck. My future match with me and him in the future. So that's all I can tell you about that.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. We'll see you next time as we bring in your third opponent, Brian. Brian, I would say in terms of the points and the performance, this was a step up over your debut match against Chris. However, it didn't unfortunately go your way in the end still, but how are you feeling, at least in terms of confidence and experience getting in there?
Feeling pretty good. Did much better than my previous two matches I was in. Alejandro has out to him. He came out of nowhere, like with those pitches, and even though I didn't win, it's still exhibition to go on my record.
Yeah, it does not go on your record. Now, your next match is either coming up or has already aired, depending on how the recording for that goes, because honestly, I'm not 100% sure at the moment. But you are playing Kevin Poss in the first round of our Summer Invitational Tournament. I guess I'll ask you, what are your thoughts on that coming up?
See how well I do then. Will it be like say better performance than my first two, or will it be a step up?
Absolutely. Well,
I know Kevin. He's the same. I'm in the same type of league as him. Faced him a couple of times, either in trivia or I've been on him with Redcom. So I'll see how well he does and see how well I do. May the best person win.
Absolutely. That match may have already aired by this point, but at the very least, you got this match recorded first to get that little extra prep in. So thank you, Brian. We will see you next time, sir, as we send everybody out of here. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in and checking out this Pixar-centric match. If you guys have not seen Lightyear in theaters, please go check it out, not only to support Pixar and support their latest endeavor, but I mean, actually, no, I'm going to really stress, go support Pixar's latest endeavor. This is their first time returning to theaters proper in about 2 years. Onward kind of got fucked because of COVID, and they've had 3 films go straight to Disney Plus. So it's big for them to get back into theaters and hopefully have a huge success with this movie. I hope the movie is as good as I've been hearing, because I have heard some really good things about it. And actually, I'm seeing it today, the day that this is airing, not the day that this is being recorded. So with that said, thank you to Alejandro, Brian, and Jonathan for showing up here, putting in some good performances. Thank you to Zach and Chris for judging with me today. If this is your first Battleground match, stick around. If you like the exhibitions, we have some more of those on the channel. Go searching through the playlist, but we also have some great actual matches coming up, including yesterday we aired the latest title match between yours truly and the champion Henry Sanchez. See if he was able to defend that title he wanted so badly, or was I able to take it off of him? There's no way I could spoil that. There's no physical belt. I don't got that kind of money. Shipping would be a bitch. It's just, yeah, it's not possible. But check that match out and check out all the great matches we have. As I said, Brian's a part of a tournament that has 10 players. Alejandro has grabbed what looks like a replica belt in the background. Shipping would still be a bitch. That thing is huge. And so we're going to call it there because I'm getting distracted now. Thank you guys for watching Movie Battleground. We will see you next time. Take care, everybody.